Hi guys, my name's Vix and welcome back to my channel. This is the first video in a multiple part series where I'm going to be taking my mess of an office and transforming it into the interior of like a sci-fi spaceship. I've created some 3D renders in Blender to sort of plan out this space and what I'm going to be doing in this series. It's not going to look exactly like this. This is being very optimistic, but I knew I had to get some sort of layout in place, some sort of plan that I could follow. I love making over spaces, but I have this terrible habit of just doing it on the fly and focusing on one tiny section rather than the room as a whole. So this time I made sure to spend the time to actually plan out the entire space that's going to be functional, cohesive, and just flow really well. It's also likely going to drive me insane. Before today's video, I thought we'd tackle the hopefully easiest part of the entire build, or at least the part that I thought needed to be done first before I start messing with putting holes in walls and such. We're going to be creating a replacement stand for the bird cages, something that looks built in, that's got drawers, that's functional, that I can store everything away and not have it just be out there on display and look absolutely terrible. I absolutely hate how those stands look on bird cages. They're just, I know they work and they're functional and they're on the wheels, which is fantastic, but they just look so ugly. So I think this little change is going to have such a big improvement to the space already. I did consider building these from scratch, but I have a small car and getting wood from Bunnings to home is kind of a pain. So I thought instead I would have a look on IKEA and see if there's an easier way out of this. Luckily there was. We're going to be using their Nordly range for this particular build. What I liked about these is that they were basically the right size and had a whole bunch of drawers. They're also modular, which is absolutely awesome, and just seem to have a whole bunch of good reviews. But before we get to building those, we have so much work to do in this room. We have some huge bookcases that are also from IKEA actually, that I got when I first moved into this place. And I love them, but they just take up so much space in that room, and they are display cases, and I'm trying to hide the mess. So we're gonna make an even bigger mess, take off all the stuff from those, somehow move them to the living room and set them up so that they frame the TV and we can put all of our nicks and knacks on those. We have a very big job ahead of us, but I hope you guys enjoy the chaos. So let's get into it. So the first thing we need to do is actually make some space so that we can put in our new furniture. I'm going to start by taking off all of my props and bits and pieces that have been collecting dust in these display cases so that I can actually move them to another room without breaking everything, hopefully. We are definitely in the messy and chaotic stage of this room redesign, and I tell you what, I was feeling a little overwhelmed as my room started to get further and further away from the nice white walls and white furniture and cleanliness that I had designed and imagined. But you just gotta go with it. You gotta trust it's just part of the process. Despite that and how much I kind of dislike this phase, it's kind of interesting at the same time. You get to go through all of your little bits and pieces and reminisce on memories and what everything means to you. I don't know, it's kind of nice and reflective at the same time as being very, very stressful. At this stage of the project though, I had no idea where any of these bits and pieces were going to go. They just sort of started covering every surface in my room, and I had no real plan for their final position in the new build. I feel like I definitely should have had a plan. I did not. I knew that for this build I wanted any shelving to be sparsely decorated. I have this nasty habit of just putting too much on the shelves and it just looks too chaotic and too much. So for now, a lot of these bits and pieces are going to end up in drawers. A couple of them will be on display later on, but I really need to consider what I want to display and when. Maybe I can start rotating some of my props and memorabilia so that I don't feel the need to have everything on display all at once. But overall, storage is just a massive factor in this build. I want so many more drawers, so many more shelves, and at some point I'm definitely going to tackle the wardrobe that's in this room, which is currently storing all of my cosplays and bits and pieces, but it's just never really worked. So maybe we can do some more inbuilt drawers and shelves in there as well. But now we're up to the secondary part of this first hurdle. I'm basically moving this mess into another room. I try not to do this, but the house is kind of small, so it always ends up working out this way. Originally, when I was trying to design this room, I didn't even consider the fact that I could have moved the display cases. But then it occurred to me that they might look really, really nice framing the TV. The living room space, this wall in particular, has always been a bit weird. It's a bit busy, it doesn't really work, there's no cohesion to it. So I thought that having the display cases on either side of the TV might help us with some of the clutter and bits and pieces in this space, but also just tie it in all together. These display cases, once you remove the doors and all the bits and pieces inside them, were actually pretty easy to move around. I was quite surprised. I just put a towel underneath as a bit of a makeshift trolley and was able to slide them in position quite easily. This was definitely the part I was most worried about because I decided to start this project today because Joel was out of the house for a couple of hours, and I thought, how good would it be if I could get this all done and sorted so that he didn't have to deal with the stress of having a messy house. Yes, I had set a very harsh deadline and a very hard task, which luckily turned out a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. There are 2 cases in this build where there is a drawer or a door that you can't actually access. Although this would be a deal breaker for most people, for me it was a trade-off I could live with. This is the first case of that. This particular display case in this position, you cannot access the left door because of that light shelf hanging on the wall. It makes access a little tricky, but it's still functional, so for now I'm okay with it. We might move the shelf in the future though. I don't know how, but the doors were the hardest part about that whole exercise. Huh. And to reward myself for getting one done, I got to decorate it, including putting my grandfather's clock on the wall. But we are certainly not done yet, we still have one more to move. This one's going to be a little bit trickier because I need to move this glass cabinet before I can get it in place. I'm not really sure where that glass cabinet is going to go at the end of all this. At the moment it's just sitting in my office. But maybe I can change the design a little bit and work it into it. I actually found reattaching the doors so tedious that I opted to keep one on to move this one, and it made it so much heavier, so I don't recommend that, but hey, I was being stubborn. I was also being stubborn and didn't want to use the stud finder, but it ended up just being too hard to find the studs, so had to use that anyway. Beautiful. I'm gonna decorate these shelves behind the scenes because there's some personal items on there. But for now, the hard part is over. And the next hard part is about to begin. You being the parcel inspector? My IKEA order arrives, and I realized just how much work I had to do in the near future. Ido was working very hard too. We won't be tackling all of the boxes that you saw in that footage. Just about 4, I think, of them. Today we're going to be constructing the Nordley sets. I got 2 lots of these. One of them's 120 centimeters long and the other one I think was like 80 centimeters long. And with these 2, they should cover all of the bird cages. As I said, these are modular. You can even stack them and go higher if you want to, but I thought this was the right height where I can do some maintenance on top of the cages if I need to, but they're not so low that it looks weird in the space or it's just impractical to have the birds that low on the ground. I also opted to go with a variety of different sized drawers. I just thought this would be the most practical to help me organize this space. Assembling this furniture took such a long time. I think I always underestimate how long it takes to assemble IKEA furniture. By the time I finished this, it was dark and I was an absolute expert at building these Nordley drawers. I could whip them up so quickly by the end of it. But at the same time, I never want to do that again. But I will, in the next video of this series. Yeah. A big consideration of this room makeover was the birds. I wanted to make sure that however I tackled it, it would be the least stressful for the birds as possible. And that is the main reason why we are tackling the bird stands first. Despite my intentions, this is still going to be a bit stressful for them though, and it's definitely something to consider if you're doing any sort of work on bird cages in their homes. You can see in a lot of the footage that every now and then if there's a cord coming up or I'm moving a cage that the birds will flap and fly. I tried to limit this as much as possible. You can see I actually moved Daphne into the kitchen for a little bit, so for 1 there's more space for me, but for 2 it's less stressful for her. And my plan was to basically get it done as quickly as possible with the least amount of stress for them. I felt that if I dragged this over a couple of days it was just going to stress them out too much, and they needed to be situated in their new locations and new orientation of the room as soon as possible so they could adjust as soon as possible. But if you guys are doing this yourself, I'm sure that you understand your birds and what their needs are and how they react to things like this and can plan accordingly. But it's just definitely something to consider when you're working on a space. That being said, one of the animals that was most unhappy about the room makeover was Ido. She was barking so much. Ido has a fear of power tools. I don't know where it's come from, but she absolutely hates them. We'll run out of the room and have a tantrum every time we use them. As you can imagine, me using the drill for hours and hours was definitely stressing her out, and she was very upset about it. But don't worry, she got lots of treat and cuddles throughout this build, and definitely the night after I was finished. These cages are kind of heavy. Right. How do we move it here? I know, this sucks. Yeah, it sucks. There's all sorts of items. Cords. Yeah, it's not fun. Oh, I hit the wall. That's alright, I need to paint this wall anyway. Here we go. Hey, dang! Oh wow, that already looks way better. It's not even in position yet. I haven't given myself a lot of space to do this. There we go. Yes! Good. It's done.
Hi.
Hi.
Dinner's here.
Okay. What is holding this up? I've just unscrewed it, and this doesn't actually connect. So I'm trying to work out what's still holding it there, if anything, or is it just gravity? Yeah, okay, so it is freestanding. Okay, pick it up. Oh, this one's the shit one. This one may not work. So hang on. The base isn't big enough, so we just need to see how this is gonna have to sit. Ah. All the others worked. So if it's not clear there, Ollie's cage is actually a different design, and because of that, he's got these little stumpy legs on his cage rather than a solid wireframe base. So it didn't sit raised on the furniture, the legs are actually overlapping the sides and therefore blocking the drawer. I'll need to DIY something in the future to fix this, but for now it's fine, it's stable. Let's do some quick tidying up so I get some sort of sense of accomplishment, and go have dinner, and then I'll show you the final results. That was a big one. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I think these look way better than the standard stands that these cages arrived on. It looks so much more inbuilt, and while I still have a huge amount of work to do, this is such a nice, just first little achievement in this chaos that is my room. We still need to sort out a solution for Ollie's cage with those little stumpy legs, so that I can actually lift it up, because at the moment I can't really use this top drawer. And I have stuck some little sticker bump things on top of these so that the cages don't fall forward, but I might do something a bit more permanent in the near future just to lock them in real well. This section of the room has actually been up and running for a couple of weeks now, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's just completely revolutionized the storage for the birds things and the other bits and pieces that I can now put in these drawers from the other sides of the room, and it just looks so clean and so good. But this is it for part one. In the next part, we're going to be tackling the computer area, which actually at the time of filming the intro and outro of this video, it's done and you guys are gonna love it. It looks fantastic. But I am really excited to see how this room changes over time into what I envisioned. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. So if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. I'm trying to get new videos out every Friday, and it seems to be that way so far. But that's all for this video, so I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you may be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys! And now I can rest. Ugh.